This week's episode of Invincible focused on the Multiverse of Marks, a long-awaited arc in the comic books that has finally been adapted, and today we're going to talk about how we feel about it. Just to start it off, I am Deep Cut, joined here today by Tony Bones. How did you feel about the episode?
Honestly, probably my favorite of the show.
Absolutely my favorite.
I gotta say, yeah, I totally dug it, like top to bottom.
Yeah, I can say this actually. I have seen episode 8 already because we get early access to review.
Yeah.
And I loved the finale too. Don't get me wrong, it's a great follow-up piece, but this episode is probably the greatest episode of Invincible ever, and I can see why so many fans have been waiting for it.
Are people anticipating this episode? Like,
oh yeah, so it's because with the comics already having their own stories and them getting adapted, people are waiting for so many different arcs, and this is just I can see why it's one of the most anticipated. Just conceptually, it's great. Like outside of the Viltrumite plot, I don't like a lot of these other stories, and I didn't really like Angstrom at first. But having this plot line just makes it all so worth it, and hopefully there's even more of it to come. Because clearly we're not done with them.
No, not at all. No, I feel like it was a concept that I would think I would have seen before, like in a more mainstream version of these types of like superhero shows. Like, why wouldn't a villain that can travel across dimensions, get all the evil versions of the main character together, and to seek revenge in this way? I thought it was well done and very
it probably
exciting.
Has on some level.
I'm saying I am not aware of it.
Yeah.
And
like off the top of my head, I can't say, but I'm sure.
Yeah. But I feel like I can remember most of the big comic arcs just from interest growing up. But this one I thought was like, oh, this is great. This is what you would want. This is like Lego shit.
Lego? What do you mean by that?
I mean, like if you were playing Legos.
Oh.
And you had, let's say you had like 5 Spider-Man Legos. Well, I would make 4 of them evil and have them appear and try to take over his life or do something or messing with the image of the character.
That would be the story you create with the toys.
Yeah. No, it was total wish fulfillment in that way. I really liked it.
That makes perfect sense. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I think that's Invincible has always taken what happens in the comics and takes it a step further. And I feel like this episode really just proves that. Like you and I have talked a little bit before about the whole like will he kill or the desire not to kill.
Yeah.
And I think here in this episode, having him finally make that switch, realizing the consequences of that with this very symbolic, like the whole world's been destroyed by Mark, and it's because of his inability to just like see through terminating a threat, something that already almost killed his mother, and then agonizing about it.
Oh my god, that scene where he had him and Oliver was like, just kill this guy, and he lets him slip away. I'm like, dude, I get it. But it's just like it feels like a weird sort of code of ethics that he's put on himself that I'm like, I don't know, at least for me, I'm like, you put my mom in danger, you're dead, buddy.
Yeah. And
the world is destroyed.
Yeah, it really is. And that's before it was already like he was causing such, mayhem and havoc. And it just came down to, at the end of the day, what this story is starting to say is like the idea of not wanting to kill, but also being some sort of great hero is just not realistic.
Yeah.
It's not practical. You need to do something. You have to, at the end of the day, it's selfish even.
Yeah.
Like, it's saying, like, I don't want to taint myself in this way while also trying to be in the conflict. And now all these other people are getting hurt because of, if someone else were to step up and rise to the challenge, they could handle this permanently, but you won't.
Do you think, like, as a culture, we are becoming more into that? We're like more welcoming of that concept in a hero? Because I remember when the Man of Steel movie came out, and at the very end, spoiler alert for like a 11-year-old movie, but he like snaps Zod's neck.
Yeah.
And there was such a big reaction to that, being like, my Superman would never do that,
Yeah, so I don't know. From what I understand, I think original comics were maybe a bit more gritty in some cases and weren't worried about death. But at some point, comics as a whole we're kind of attacked by, you know, what we think of as like the Christian mother militia of like, I just don't want my kids consuming violence.
Okay.
So suddenly there became this idea that like Superman doesn't kill, he's the good guy, because good guys don't kill. And that started like decades and decades, and it's, you know, it's been deconstructed before, like you said, in Man of Steel, even before that in parodies. There's all these videos on YouTube you can find, just funny cartoons that are of Batman breaking every bone in the Joker's body in the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
So now it's like, what are you gonna do now? Like, I didn't kill you, but now you can't go out there, break out 50 more times, and create endless mayhem and work for me, frankly. You know, so it's the culture's always been aware of it. You know, it just started off as like a limitation because of kids media, essentially, or even teen media. You know, there's still restrictions on that. And there's always been comics that just didn't care for that, but when it comes to like Marvel and DC, and especially since Disney took over Marvel, that's always been a thing. And it's not just that; it's like kids' cartoons followed the same trend. The closest we got to like a turnaround on this was a show called Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, where like the season 2 finale was her finally being like, okay, if I don't actually fight, this guy's gonna kill like a lot of people, and that's just not okay. So she fights, and it's like not even violent, you know, it's just like an actual fight. And I remember praising the creators in an interview, talking about how other writers would have just had the characters stick to their morals, and then the villain just like slip and fall basically and happen to die. And they got a weird look in their eyes when I said that, and I didn't know why at the time. But then in season 3, they had to go back on that. And that was what happened in season 3. She returned to her morals, refused to fight.
Did it like tank the quality of the show? Like, did it feel like
it ruined the ending for me? Because it's like, for me, the ending was about that, but it ended up being like the entire final season was about all the other characters who like, one girl like grew up, like she was being literally raised by wolves, and she didn't realize it was so that they would eventually eat her when she was like well trained enough to be good practice for their pups.
Okay.
So she had to kill all the wolves and wears her once, it was someone she thought of as a sister, as her wolf skin. And now they're just like singing cheesy songs to get all the different like demon species.
This is an animated property?
Yeah, it's like a Netflix show. But the point is, like, it's always been, there's always been this moral, you know, within animation, comics, superheroes, fantasy that leans into childhood friendly. You know, you just can't go around murdering people all the time.
I mean, I guess not. But in this case, I like to see it. I'm waiting. It'll be a good day when Mark just finally kills this guy, dude. Oh my god. I mean, I hope he does. I hope it's not like he's like then the one who always gets away, and maybe in the comics that's how it is, but I just want to see him die. Oh my god.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I feel like
he's so annoying, and I don't even feel like his motivation for evil to begin with was very strong. Like, he was one of the good guys, and like I get it, you're deformed. It happens. But
now he's just going to be used by the weird robots that are...
You think that's what's going to happen?
Oh, I think there was a scene right there in the episode where they explain that... Because he comes back with his arm ripped off.
Oh, you mean the robots that were like working on him?
Yeah, his technicians.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like those little...
No, not
eyeball
those. His
things.
technician guys are, you work for us now. So like they're going to use his multiverse technology for their own reasons, which will probably be less Mark focused.
Yeah.
To me, what makes Angstrom interesting is the ability to connect the other Marks to him. Like, that was what made it worth him coming back. It was very disappointing when they just got put in another universe for a while. But like with everything in the show, it's just a matter of time before they come back. All of these things are kind of recurring.
Those little drone things, he had so many of them. Like an insane amount of those things.
Just get a multiverse of slaves working on it. There's probably, I mean, I know we killed a lot of the multiverse of Angstroms, but there's always got to be more, man.
I know. It's just so funny, like, to see that was what he was throwing at him, was just a bunch of little, like, drones. And there was just a flood of them constantly. I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess it makes sense. This is what I would do. It was just like a more practical way of a character going about it.
It felt like the Sonic movies, where he's constantly just fighting like random floating little, I don't know if you've seen the
I've seen none of the Sonic movies.
Kind of felt like that, and then he just starts, you know, busting them because he's invincible, so why not?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really more about just like, what I like is the trauma more than like I don't care for. I mean, I like a good battle. Don't get me wrong, but what the show does well is trauma. And what they're doing is like they're with this they're showing they're taking the entire idea of superhero ethics as we built them up in our childhood and not just throwing gore into it, but it's always been about trying to ruin Mark. And that's where we're at now. He's ruined. Like his little brother is now his boss.
Yeah. His little brother, man, that kid.
His 6-month-old brother now outranks him in terms of like understanding the basics of like how morals apply to galactic battle.
No, I wonder like where. I don't want to look ahead because I want to be surprised, but just where this character will go in future seasons.
So it's like now that we've made from here, there's definitely going to be like season 4 has to focus on him like coming to terms with okay, it is right to kill. But now it's like every single battle, he's going to be wondering, like, should I be killing this person or getting them to jail?
Yeah.
And obviously, he still doesn't want to, he's not just suddenly like, yeah, I want to kill people now. Like at the end, we saw with Powerplex that he was just trying to hold him down and even got Oliver to hold him down too.
Yeah.
So it's about balance ultimately. But season 4, it's going to be about like, where do I draw the line? And probably regretting a few like, hasty kills he feels he has to make.
I think like bringing in all of these other versions of Mark was cool because it made me realize what version of Mark we have been following this whole show, which is this sort of almost like the least interesting version of those characters, but I think that's what makes it interesting to then see that guy like fight all these other versions of himself.
Well, that's the fun of the multiverse in general is like you don't want to be like too specific with your main character. The fun is having someone generic because regardless of what their real personality is, when they're generic enough, you proxy into them.
Yeah.
And then what you're seeing is like alternate versions of yourself and how you would be if things were just a little bit different and not just evil. Like, so previously I talked about how I feel like we have the goodest Mark, the nicest Mark, the most good Mark, whatever way you want to put it. Back in season 2, it felt that way to me, that there was just this endless multiverse of like very shallow narcissistic Marks, and ours is the only one who actually like developed empathy for the people on his planet.
But I mean, those other versions had pieces of it.
So that's where I was going. It was like this episode showed that whether or not they're truly as empathetic as him, probably not so much.
Well, I mean, they were willing to like
destroy an entire dimension just for like, I just want another Eve.
Yeah,
was the good. That's like the best version. Is like I just miss my mom, who had to die apparently in my dimension anyway. So like,
well, some of them had killed their mom too.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's there's a spectrum. Don't get me wrong, but ours does appear to be the most pure.
Yeah, or at least like compared to those characters. But I thought it was interesting. There was like the scene where they showed all of the Marks that got defeated.
Yeah,
and there was the Viltrumite one floating in space, which I thought was interesting because if he was a Viltrumite, wouldn't he like? Even Mark had a hard time fending off Viltrumites. Like, wouldn't that guy be kind of indestructible?
Yeah, so the implication that we've gotten really was that like they're all living a very similar life up until the point where they develop their powers. And when ours develops his powers, he turns good, but the others are essentially the shallow version of a superhero fan.
Yeah.
With Mark, you have someone who just wants to be good, and because of that, being a hero is hard because it requires you doing bad things, even if it's to bad people.
Yeah.
Whereas all these other people, what they really just wanted was the glory. They wanted to just be, a superhero, a comic book hero. And when you want that, it doesn't really matter what happens. You just want power, really.
Yeah, I guess I thought it had more weight just because they had that whole ending of maybe episode 3 or 4 where it's Omni-Man and Seth Rogen's character, what's his name? Alan the alien.
Yeah.
And like it took them two flying in to punch a guy to kill this guy.
I feel like they are inconsistent in general with that. With like what especially with like Mark, it's like sometimes he's, invincible and sometimes he's not.
He's been getting his ass kicked this season.
Yeah, so in this episode, one thing they seemed to emphasize was that all of these other Marks are a bit weaker than our Mark because our Mark had to be trained to fight Viltrumites.
Yeah.
So like that was something that started, I believe, at the beginning of the season was we had that training montage where he's being pushed to his limits beyond probably even what Omni-Man had been up to just because like Omni-Man was already the most powerful And when you're not fighting other Viltrumites, when you're not worried about turning against them, you don't have to challenge yourself that way.
Yeah.
So what you have, our mark is actually more powerful than them, and it makes sense that all the other marks would be easier to defeat. I still feel like the fact that it like happened is a little much, but
When did that? There was a brief scene where one of the marks is fighting somebody, and they end up in like the desert, and they show. Remember the villain? He was
the are we talking about the archaeologist girls?
Yes.
Yeah, the feminist archaeologists.
When did that happen? Was that
was like
this
the season 2 finale?
Okay, yeah, I like remembered that. I'm like, okay, that was a good use of this sort of. This is all happening, and it almost like that happening made me sort of appreciate the little bits we were seeing from this season with the two guys that were robbing the bank that ended up in the prison. Where I'm like, okay, I kind of like this idea of
it's a whole world.
This whole world of people floating in and out. Like, did we ever get resolution for the characters from the first episode? There was a guy who was a security guard who then was quitting to go travel with his son.
Oh, dude,
abroad?
Didn't they die? Like, wasn't that the whole point? Was it was his last day, and then he dies on the job, and they make it look very noble.
No, but I thought he got away. I thought he was going to die, and then they cut to him abroad in another episode, and maybe he died then. But I don't remember. It was so long ago. But it just made me think about that and just these sort of side characters, which I almost like that way of going about it more than following the robot boy and his monster girlfriend.
Yeah, that's not getting any better for me, and it's kind of like it almost feels wrapped up. Like, okay, now you're both humans, and
yeah, and they wrapped up the Ray and
yeah, so that's what I was gonna get us to next.
Yeah, R.I.P.
I gotta say this, I so saw that coming.
Okay, can I tell you?
Yeah, go for it.
So there's this movie called Scream.
Okay.
If you're familiar with it.
No, I've never heard of Scream.
You're joking.
Yes.
Okay, I was like, wait, what? I was like, what? No, so there's a huge bit in that movie where they're talking about how when a character says, "I'll be right back," they never come right back. And as soon as he said those words, and then like when he kisses her and he jumps away, he's like, I'll be right back. I'm like, oh man.
Oh, you want to know when I figured it out?
This guy's gonna die.
I figured it out in the first conversation he had with her when she's like, and ever since I've chilled out, things have been really cool with the other Guardians of the Globe.
Oh,
and I was like, as soon as he said that, I was like, this dude's getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew like the multiverse of Marks thing was coming up. I didn't know if it was going to be in this episode or the next.
Yeah.
But as soon as he said that, I was like, that was so easy.
Yeah.
And suddenly it all made sense why they were fattening him up for a kill.
Oh, yeah.
They were trying to make us like him.
And you did.
That's the worst part is, no, I liked who he was before. To me, this is like, I'm mourning the loss of the jerk that he once was.
I thought you liked the post-jerk version of Rexplode.
No, so I like when he's acting wild still. That's the thing, is like he's, technically post-jerk when he's like saying some of the funny stuff I love. Mm-hmm. But as soon as he gets post-jerk, now he's dating Ray, and I'm just, there's nothing else to explore. He stopped being funny. Everything he said was just essentially him now, like looking back, we can now say,
what do you got against Ray? You come in every week, odd against Ray. What's going on?
I just don't care about...
Who hurt you?
So that's the thing, is like, I don't mind Ray.
Yeah.
I just don't care for what happened to Rex.
Okay.
That's my problem, is just like, I thought Rex was going in a better direction overall. Like, he was going to be a bit less antagonistic, but still be a jerk. Mm-hmm. And instead what we got was him just acting like a freaking softie.
He was in love,
Sure, okay.
Let him love.
No. No, like that's not how TV works.
It is exactly how TV works. We see it all the time.
No, and that's the thing, is like that
People
was...
falling in love in Smallville, left and right.
I don't imagine in the comics that because that's the thing, we know he wasn't dating her in the comics because she was a dude. Maybe there was someone else, but I just don't see him saying those words. I feel like it was kind of
what words?
Ever since I've chilled out, things have been great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure if he died in the comics or when.
Well,
I don't know if they do like The Walking Dead where they try to remix that a little bit.
I'm sure someone will let us know.
Very angrily in the comments will be like, "Oh, just read the..." Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have definitely appreciated the death though, because that's the thing is like it is still like this was a character. Like they fattened him up for the
I like a
kill.
good sacrifice.
Exactly. Well, for me, you got to have that in the show in particular, because it's like with all the characters being killed off, you can't just keep it distant. You can't just keep it villains. Something has to happen close to home.
I hope it's not like in the show Flash, the live action Flash show. I believe there was in like season 4 they kill off Barry's, spoiler alert, they kill off Barry's girlfriend, Iris, and in an episode. And I remember it was so tragic, but then it was revealed that she didn't die or something. I hate that stuff. I really hope he's dead and we never got to see him again.
Yeah, if the death isn't permanent, I just get bored and upset, especially if they do it over and over again. Some shows just abuse it.
Like what? Give me an example of a show.
Oh God, Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Uh-huh.
Sailor Moon. If you watch anime, that's a little bit of a cheap one because they like every character in that show has died like 3 or 4 times and come back to life like immediately.
It's just, was there like a boom of this? Was there a show that made this cool to do and now we've just been stuck in a cycle of it?
Well, here's what happened with Angel was the love interest of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And when Joss Whedon wrote the show, he had always intended for him to die relatively early on. And I guess, spoiler alert, at the end of season 2, he dies. And now I'm wondering because I want you to watch this and enjoy it.
I will forget about it.
All right. Well, they basically kill him off, but then he was so popular that by the time they got to season 2 and they were writing this arc, the WB already wanted to do a spin-off show with him.
Oh my God, Angel.
Angel. That's how Angel got a show. That's the thing. So it's like
there we go.
they bring him back
right
back in season 3 so that you can have this arc. And then like this entire show that goes on for 5 seasons afterwards. And then within the show, just like it happens more and more. Buffy got canceled at one point, so you can imagine how they wanted it to end originally, and then it had to go on somehow.
They do the same thing in Smallville with what's her face? Lana Lang.
Yeah.
She dies in a car accident, but then there's like a clone version or a plane crash, and then there's a clone.
That seemed more purposeful.
Because
it wasn't like a finale death, was it?
I don't remember. I haven't seen that show in like 10 years, but I just remember it. I remember it feeling sort of like I know this character is coming back.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Even though if maybe, I don't know, maybe it was they wanted to kill her off, and then it could have been the same thing. I mean, these shows that are dictated by, I think, what was it, like a Warner Bros. Who put out Smallville?
I want to say that was on UPN, maybe WB.
Originally?
I don't even remember, to be honest.
When I was watching it, it was on CW.
That's the thing. So WB and UPN fused to become CW.
Okay.
So that's how that happened.
That makes sense.
They had separately lost a combined $1 billion over the course of like 10 years. And they were like, think of how much we could lose together. When it comes to Rex, it really could go either way. I feel like this could be like, yeah, this is the dramatic character death to remind us that death happens and it's time to get rid of him. Or it could go the complete opposite direction in exactly what you said about the Lana Lane thing. Like, they could... this is Invincible, 100%. He's already been cloned once. Robot is just a clone of him.
Yeah.
So it's like, are they really just going to leave him dead? If there's a multiverse of Marks, is there a multiverse of Rexes?
Most likely.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be kind of weird. It'd be weird if like we get another version of him. I mean, I think that is also what happens in Smallville is Lana comes back, but she's a clone. And the relationship between the characters
was he there
different.
with them in the future when they went back in time? I feel like he was.
Oh, when Adam Eve shows up?
When the whole Guardians of
yeah,
the Globe
yeah,
show
I
up.
believe he was there, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean...
But, I mean, they changed the timeline. But this is kind of my point, is like there could be so many, like, they've already got one new weird version of Rex in.
Well, I mean, as you said, it is Invincible.
And... So now that we've got Rex and all the commentary out of the way, what was actually just like the coolest part? Because it was like beyond any of the story elements.
Yeah.
Really a great episode.
I gotta say, the costumes.
The different...
I was so into some of these costumes. I thought there was at least 4 different Evil Mark costumes that I preferred to the one that we have now. I kind of like the one where the guy had the loose mask where it was just like a drape over his face.
Yeah.
whatever what is that officially called? I don't know.
I don't even know on that one. To your point earlier about like whether or not some of them were like more Viltrum, that's the thing is the outfits do all imply different things.
Yeah.
And you might imagine like some of them maybe got an earlier start than Mark, so maybe the Viltrumite takeover happened earlier, and he's going to be more, assimilated into their culture.
Yeah.
But also you just see like so many different personalities. Like there's one that just wants to be his dad.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that one. He kind of like floats down, and it kind of has this like stoicism.
Super creepy.
Yeah.
Oh man, and that's it. I wish the show was really just about that. Like it's really just like what I want is the Invincible of Spider-Man multiverse. Mm-hmm.
Elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
So it's like when the show started, it was more about the Viltrumite conflict for me, which is great. But now, like, there's not that many of them left. Apparently, they're like really slowed down. Whatever. Now the most interesting thing is there's an endless dimension of Marks who would be happy just to keep messing with this dimension with the right incentives, and that's more like what you get into with Spider-Man's multiverse stories.
Sure.
Like that's the thing is like now I just want more of that. I want more. I just want to explore all these other Marks trying to mess with this Mark in this world. I want them all to want revenge, and I want them to go get even more Marks so they each form their own different Mark squad.
I would like it to be done a little more on the ground.
Yeah.
Like it'd be cool if these people were impersonating him and messing with his almost day-to-day life too.
Interesting.
Because there was a scene, and they kind of played as a joke earlier, where they cut to his house, and a version of Mark is screaming for his mother to try to get her out of the house.
Yeah.
And I was like, that would be scary. Imagine if you think this is your son, and then
There's a lot that could be done with that.
That was something, I know we keep talking about Smallville, but that was a great arc in Smallville where the Bizarro version of him arrives. And it was a whole thing where he sort of takes over Clark's life, and Lana falls in love with the alternate version of Clark Kent. And then when it's revealed that this is like not the actual Clark, she realizes that the normal version of Clark can't give her what she wants, but this evil version of him does. And I'm like, I would eat that stuff up.
It's so good.
In a
And
heartbeat.
people say the multiverse is kind of like overrated or overdone at this point. I don't think anything ever, like, it can be overdone, don't get me wrong. But it's the thing that works about the multiverse is like it's a mirror that you place inside of a story, and suddenly everything within it is reflected back at the audience.
Well, I think last week I sort of approached it with that angle of, I'm over the multiverse thing. But I think what this show could do that something like the Spider-Man thing and even Flash that tried doing a multiverse couldn't do is those two properties where we're relying a lot on the fan service.
Yeah.
Where this show has, at least for me, there's no fan service. This is just a whole other world where if I get the reference of what this character is kind of based on,
Yeah.
then there's a little win there, but it's not fully based on that.
Yeah.
So not having that thing weighing it down, it could allow for these interesting stories to sort of branch off of that.
I guess ultimately it is the point is that it's about quality versus just doing it.
Yeah.
And how you do it. Even that show Adventure Time, they did a multiverse exploration season recently, and it was just like the audience lost their mind over just like very simple alternate versions because it was more about how deep they were instead of how extreme.
Yeah. What do you feel like they're trying to do with the Ollie character? Because if I'm going off of how this show has, gone about delivering a story, they sort of set this thing up, and then all these things kind of happen, and eventually they circle back to the thing they set up earlier. And they've been setting this character up, and his conflict, and even having that scene between him and Mark where he's yelling at him to kill this guy. I wonder if, maybe in the next season, the Oliver character, and he's gonna age past Mark at some point. Are we gonna see him getting involved with the Viltrumites in some way? That could be really cool. Or
Yeah, so I mean that's the thing is on some level, the Viltrumites might be causing a lot of peace in the universe with how much they've taken over. And there's always the drama and trauma at first, but at the end of the day, like I can see Oliver aligning with them. I could also just see Oliver, finding his own middle ground, but especially at first being, more violent. We've already seen that, and like Mark's worried, but like now that Mark is like, you were right, it's gonna happen.
did his planet get destroyed? Like his home planet?
I don't remember. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah.
If they went there and like got rid of. I think that's why he sent him to Earth. Right? That was what was about to happen?
That what was going on?
Or did they just leave the planet as is with the bug people?
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
So many of these plot lines. They hit me and then they keep on going.
It was rough at first. I'm starting to see the beauty of it because at first, like I said, I mostly wanted the Viltrumite plot. Now I mostly want these multiverse plots. That's two good plots to bounce back and forth through. But I'm starting to appreciate, like, I wasn't super stoked at the idea that Angstrom is going to come back again, for season 4. This is the third time now that we should have probably killed him. But now he's at least going to be a tool for something else. And I like the idea of interdimensional beings trying to mess with this other reality and where that can go.
Yeah.
And beyond this reality. That's the thing. At some point, this can become like a big multiverse, takeover beyond what the Viltrumites were doing. What happens if the Viltrumites get multiverse technology through Angstrom or these technicians?
I wonder who these robots are. I wonder what they're...
Well, hopefully we'll get a little bit more information about him in the next episode, and who knows about the season beyond. But thanks again for joining me here on the Cartoon Universe / Random Universe podcast.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys next time. Oh, and if you want us to read the comics, no.